This is March 2023, lessons 4 and 5, reading from chapter 28, Kapila's instructions on the execution of devotional service. Samapriya, you want to pick some readers?
Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone. I'm glad that we're meeting today, but I'm sad that we didn't go to Rath Yatra. But we're see happiness and distress. We're going to go on April 15th, hopefully. Okay. Let's start today with Manvantara. Would you like to begin?
Hey, Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 28, Texts 8 and 9. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Kapila Dev, continued, after controlling one's mind and sitting postures, one should spread a seat in a secluded and sanctified place. Sit there in an easy posture, keeping the body erect, and practice breath control. The yogi should clear the passage of vital air by breathing in the following manner. First, he should inhale very deeply, then hold the breath in, and finally exhale. Or, reversing the process, the yogi can first exhale, then hold the breath outside, and finally inhale. This is done so that the mind may become steady and free from external disturbances. Purport. The real purpose of controlling the mind by the prescribed method of clearing the passage of life air is achieved immediately if one fixes his mind directly on the lotus feet of Krishna. The Hatha Yoga system or breathing system is especially recommended for those who are very absorbed in the concept of bodily existence. But one who can perform the simple process of chanting Hare Krishna can fix the mind more easily. Practicing the yoga system of exercise and breath control is very difficult for a person in this age, and therefore Lord Chaitanya recommended Kirtana Sada Hari. One should always chant the holy name of the Supreme Lord Krishna, because Krishna is the most suitable name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The name Krishna and the Supreme Person Krishna are non-different. Therefore, if one concentrates his mind on hearing and chanting Hare Krishna, the same result is achieved.
Thank you, Manvantara. I have one question to ask you. First, I want to know what struck you in this verse and purport. What struck me was easy posture, which is indicative of the way yoga is performed, no strain. And that's why Lord Chaitanya is so merciful. This is no strain. If we strain to do something, it's very difficult. What do you think, Manvantara?
Right. Well, what was reemphasized that I appreciated was that the two processes are similar, but practicing hearing and chanting is the best and easiest method. And in regard to the posture that you were talking about, I was immediately thinking about Maitreya when Krishna and Vidura was speaking, and he had an erect posture at that time. And then we were wondering what that meant. And he relaxed his shoulders or something. And so I kind of got off on a tangent on that, but yeah.
The basic principle is that, as Lord Chaitanya, and we'll read further, this is easily performed. If there's strain, it's in the mode of passion, and it's not easily. It's not. People want something that is. The only thing that satisfies us is something natural. So, but thank you for your observation of that. Okay, so now we're going to go on with Nanda reading. Nandaji, can you read?
Yep. Srimad Bhagavatam 3, 28, 10, and 11. The yogis who practice such breathing exercises are very soon freed from all mental disturbances, just as gold, when put into fire and fanned with air, becomes free from all impurities. By practicing the process of pranayama, one can eradicate the contamination of his physiological condition And by concentrating the mind, one can become free from all sinful activities. By restraining the senses, one can free himself from material association. And by meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can become free from the three modes of material attachment. Srila Prabhupada's purport. This process of purifying the mind is also recommended by Lord Chaitanya. He says that one should chant Hare Krishna. He further says, Param Vijayate, all glories to Sri Krishna Sankirtan. All glories are given to the chanting of the holy names of Krishna, because as soon as one begins this process of chanting, the mind becomes purified. Chaito Darpana Marjanam. By chanting the holy name of Krishna, one is cleansed of the dirt that accumulates in the mind. One can purify the mind either by the breathing process or by the chanting process, just as one can purify gold by putting it into a fire and then fanning it with bellows.
Okay, Nanda, what is this all about?
It's continuing comparing, the verses are continuing glorifying the process of pranayama, and Srila Prabhupada's continuing glorifying the process of chanting Hare Krishna and comparing the two. So the two verses struck me of something similar that's in purport, and I'm sorry, I don't know where, but it's in the first canto when Prabhupada talks, he goes of a progression that one can't become pure in activities unless one is pure in the mind. Maybe Premananda remembers the exact progression, but one has to follow the four regulative principles in order to become pure in activities and mind, and follow, and then chant Hare Krishna and this and that. So there's a process. So we say that, yes, chant Hare Krishna, it's equal to the results, the ultimate results are equal to the pranayama process, which is also pranayama being very difficult to execute. So chanting Hare Krishna is quote unquote easier, but there's a process to do it correctly, to reap the results quickly.
Yes. What about the three modes of attachment? That really is a striker.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Chaita wants to say something about that. She's all excited. Well, Chaita.
I love that. That also struck me. Modes of attachment. Wow, that really explains what the big problem is. Why they're called ropes, and they tie us up because when we engage in them, we become attached to things that are not so good for us.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Ananda, can you add to that?
Well, I was actually going to question, so what are those three modes of attachment?
That was my question.
I understand. I'm trying
Oh, isn't it
to read back to you.
Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas?
And that's one would think, because that's what always the three refers to. And that one in sattva has a certain type of particular characteristic of attachment. One in
Right.
has a characteristical attachment. And tamas, same way. Okay.
Yeah,
Just-
that's what appeared. Pati, you have something to add to that? Thank you, Nandaji and Chaita.
Not specifically to that, but one thing that caught my attention in the purports, I specifically picked out the purports. A lot of devotees, when they come to this section, almost have like an automatic turnoff because it says one has to practice some sort of breathing exercises, and they say, we don't follow that. So they don't really study it and understand what's the purpose behind that. Purpose is the same between the teachings that Lord Kapila Dev is explaining, purifying the consciousness, and Lord Chaitanya's Chaito Darpana Marjanam verse, explaining that the consciousness has to become purified. How does the consciousness become purified will come in the upcoming texts. But in this particular verse, Srila Prabhupada stressed the name. So Sama, I'm going to give you a verse here. Please read it and share this with the devotees.
How are you going to give it to me? Okay, here we go. This is a wonderful verse. Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Vasa Vigraha Purna Sudha Nityam Mukta Vinatvam Nami Namina. The holy name of Krishna is transcendentally blissful. It bestows all spiritual benedictions, for it is Krishna himself, the reservoir of all pleasure. Krishna's name is complete and it is the form of all transcendental mellows. It is not a material name under any condition, and it is no less powerful than Krishna himself. Since Krishna's name is not contaminated by the material qualities, there is no question of its being involved with Maya. Krishna's name is always liberated and spiritual. It is never conditioned by the laws of material nature. This is because the name of Krishna and Krishna are identical.
This
That's
is up there.
glorious.
Nama namino, the person and the person of the name are non-different, not unlike this material world. In the material world, the name of someone or the name of something is separate or different relative to that person. Krishna is absolute, so his name is him.
Right. Yeah. What other name can you chant and get purified? So, of course, we're going to hear. Oh, Nanda's got the answer. Before you say it, Nanda, we're hearing that the names of the devotees are also as powerful. Nandaji. Nanda, speak, darling.
I'm unmuting. Okay.
Okay.
I was going to raise a question. So if you want to address what you just asked, that's, you want to do that. That's different. I was going to raise the question that, as was described in the verse about the breathing process, don't we get that same result of breathing in and breathing out when we're chanting our rounds? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. No, isn't that, am I wrong to put that together?
I think that's even better. Go on, Patti.
Well, in the science of yoga, let's try to approach it from that side. Of course, we're breathing in and breathing out, but what happens in the yoga process, it's actually a physical mechanism of starting the practice. If you've ever tried it before, the teaching is to meditate first on the breath, to meditate, to actually enter into the breathing process. And then, as will be described, one actually holds the breath to the point where the breathing process stops. And because one has disassociated himself with the mechanisms of the body. So it's a little bit different in that mechanical way, but certainly the goal and the result are the same as chanting and bringing the mind under control, or physically doing it the other way, which is not possible in this age.
Oh, we also read some verses this morning about how, my God, I was thinking of it the whole time. Well, we read some verses this morning that in order to chant Hare Krishna, you have had to perform all different pious activities, offer many, many fire sacrifices, and all kinds of purificatory processes. So I would kind of be on the side of chanting Hare Krishna. This, of course, we know Lord Kapila Dev is giving this process, and it's essential, and it's essential to understand it. But in this age, we have the holy name because we can't do much more than that. And that's enough. Okay. Thank you. Hemavati, would you like to read this? Welcome to our Sangha, Hemavati. You have to unmute, darling. Unmute. See the little red mic? There's a little red mic there. On the bottom. There you go.
Yeah. Do you hear me now?
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. When the mind is perfectly purified by the practice of yoga, one should concentrate on the tips of the nose with closed eyes and see form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead as a cheerful, lotus-like countenance with ruby eyes like the interior of the lotus, and a swarthy body like the petal of the blue lotus. He bears a conch, discus, and a mace in 3 of his hands. Purport. The Supreme Godhead is Krishna. From him comes the first expansion, Baladev, and from Baladev comes Sankarshan, Aniruddha, and many other forms, followed by the Purusha avatars. As mentioned in the previous verse, Purushacharam, this Purusha is represented as Paramatma, or super descriptions of the super soul upon whom one must meditate with will be given in the following verses. Bhagavad Gita stated that meditation on the impersonal or void future is very troublesome to the meditator. Those who are attached to the impersonal or void future of meditation have to undergo a difficult process because we are not accustomed to concentrating our mind upon anything impersonal. Actually, such concentration is not even possible. Bhagavad Gita also confirms that one should concentrate his mind on the personality of Godhead. It's amazing.
Thank you. Okay,
I-
can you say something about this? I just wanted to ask, what do you think of the description of the cheerfulness, the cheerful lotus-like countenance of the Lord? This is the. Go on.
Yes, it is very beautiful. But I was going to say something about that we are not used to impersonal contacts. And that is striking to me. It's the first time I think about it this way, because it is true. I remember during COVID, we were forced to have no contact, personal contact with many of our members. And it was so unnatural that many people even drove crazy. So I think that relationship, I mean, what Prabhupada is making the point that it's not normal for us to be impersonal is so much a fact. It's so important to be personal.
Right.
Anyway, that's all I have to say about this, but
Okay.
that struck me in the
Very
verse.
There's another thing about impersonalism, which Prabhupada's going to speak a lot about it. If we're thinking in terms of impersonalism, not only there's no other relationship, but to speak about your relationship with yourself. If you're not a person, who are you? How can you identify with yourself even? So that's actually the first inkling of personalism, when you realize that I'm a unique individual. And then you can appreciate other unique individuals. So it goes down. It's a really very important point. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
let's go on reading now with Premanandaji. You'd like to read Premananda?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28, 14 through 16. His loins are covered by a shining cloth, yellowish like the filaments of a lotus. On his breast, he bears the mark of Srivatsa, a curl of white hair. The brilliant Kaustuba gem is suspended from his neck. He also wears around his neck a garland of attractive sylvan flowers and a swarm of bees, intoxicated by its delicious fragrance, hums about the garland. He is further superbly adorned with a pearl necklace, a crown, and pairs of armlets, bracelets, and anklets. His loins and hips encircled by a girdle, he stands on the lotus of his devotee's heart. He is most charming to look at, and his serene aspect gladdens the eyes and souls of the devotees who behold him. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word darshaniya tamam, which is used in this verse, means that the Lord is so beautiful that the devotee yogi does not wish to see anything else. His desire to see beautiful objects is completely satisfied by the sight of the Lord. In the material world, we want to see beauty, but the desire is never satisfied. Because of material contamination, all the propensities we feel in the material world are ever unsatisfied. But when our desires to see, hear, touch, etc. are dovetailed for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are on the level of the topmost perfection.
Thank you, Premananda. I have a question for you. Sometimes people might say, well, how does that make you feel happy to see someone else's beauty? How does that make you feel peaceful and satisfied and fulfilled when you see someone else's beauty?
Not like someone else's beauty, only the Supreme Personality of God's beauty, because Krishna is so attractive that his beauty has this attractive power that you want to keep looking at him forever. I can spend trillions of lifetimes looking at him, but still I'll never be satisfied. So that's the attractive power of Krishna. That's why his name is Krishna, which means all attractive. But if you look at mundane beauty, so-called beauty, you get tired of it after a few minutes or a few hours or a few days. So that's the speciality of Krishna's beauty.
One more question. Is
yes.
that devotional service, looking at Krishna? I mean, you're talking about how it's
absolutely.
fully enjoying.
Absolutely.
How is that devotional service?
If you are appreciating Krishna's beauty, this is also meditation on Krishna's form, right?
Very good.
Exactly. So that if you meditate on him favorably, then it's devotional service. But if you meditate on him like Kamsa, then it's unfavorable and may not be devotional service.
Good.
The gopis were so attracted to Krishna that they became disturbed even by blinking.
Yes. Yeah. And began to curse Lord Brahma why they gave him eyelids.
There was one point here I wanted to, let me bring that topic up again because it covers something. We all have propensities and impulses. So it says, because of material contamination, all the propensities we feel in the material world are ever unsatisfied. So why does that happen? We have a natural spiritual propensity. Why does it become unsatisfied?
Because we are dovetailing them at the wrong place with our contaminated senses. That's why.
When we desire to hear, touch, etc., are dovetailed for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then they're on the level of the topmost perfection.
Yes.
So that means that the answer is given, the remedy is given for being so dissatisfied and disturbed.
Okay, so why are we dissatisfied and disturbed? We're looking for eternity. Everything is temporary here.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking for complete bliss. How many of us go through the day completely blissful at every moment? There's misery all around us, and nobody knows what's going on. So that's the basic principle of not having knowledge. So it's completely opposite from anything spiritual, right? Okay, thank you. Shall we go on now? Tisha, would you like to read?
Yes.
I think you're going to read the 2 slides because that doesn't have a purport. Whoa, you got a lot to read.
Okay.
Go on.
Hare Krishna, everyone. This is verse 17 through 19. The Lord is eternally very beautiful, and he is worshipable by all the inhabitants of every planet. He is ever youthful and always eager to bestow his blessings upon his devotees.
Walmart and just calling to confirm your appointment. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call back at 352-415-6882.
The glory of the Lord is always worth singing, for his glories enhance the glories of his devotees. One should therefore meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead and upon his devotees. One should meditate on the eternal form of the Lord until the mind becomes fixed. Thus, always merged in devotional service, the yogi visualizes the Lord standing, moving, lying down, or sitting within him, for the pastimes of the Supreme Lord are always beautiful and attractive. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Lord's facial expression always indicates that he is ready to show favor and benediction to his devotees. For the non-devotees, however, he is silent. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, although he acts equally to everyone because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and because all living beings are his sons, he is especially inclined to those engaged in devotional service. The same fact is confirmed here. He is always anxious to show favor to the devotees, just as the devotees are always eager to render service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is always very eager to bestow benediction upon the pure devotees. One has to fix his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly. When one is accustomed to thinking of one of the innumerable forms of the Lord, like Krishna, Vishnu, Rama, Narayan, etc., he has reached the perfection of yoga. This is confirmed in Brahma Samhita. A person who has developed pure love for the Lord and whose eyes are smeared with the ointment of transcendental loving exchange always sees within his heart the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The devotees especially see the Lord in the beautiful blackish form of Shyamasundar. That is the perfection of yoga. Another significant word in this verse is Punya Shloka Yashakaram. The devotee is called Punya Shloka. As one becomes purified by chanting the holy name of the Lord, so one can become purified simply by chanting the name of the holy devotee. The pure devotee of the Lord and the Lord himself are non-different. It is sometimes feasible to chant the name of a holy devotee. This is a very sanctified process. Lord Chaitanya was once chanting the holy names of the gopis when his students criticized him. Why are you chanting the names of the gopis? Why not Krishna? Lord Chaitanya was irritated by this criticism, and so there was some misunderstanding between him and his students. He wanted to chastise them for desiring to instruct him on the transcendental process of chanting.
Unmute, Sama.
Sorry. Many different things were discussed in this purport. So, and the conclusion is, so far, is that the devotee and the Lord are non-different. And that's kind of interesting, right? So, the thing that struck me, what do you have to say about favor and benediction for the devotees because of the Lord's beautiful face, and not so much for the non-devotees? What can you say about that? Tisha.
I thought it was kind of made me feel a little exclusive or special or something. I don't know, just because how amazing it is to even that we're all here and that we all are, that Srila Prabhupada gave us this and that I even know about it. And I know all of you and you know all of this. And we have the beautiful temple in Alachua. We can see Shyamasundar every day on the internet. I can see the deities, or if you're there, you can see them. I don't know. I'm always amazed, kind of blown away that we're all even here. So I feel a little exclusive, I guess, but not in a bad way.
Okay, so we could call that fortunate.
Yes, okay.
We call ourselves fortunate, and then we know that it's Krishna's mercy alone or Prabhupada's mercy alone. Very good. Anyone else have something to say about this purport? Kate?
Yes, I do.
Well, I was just wait. Hemabhati, someone else is speaking, and then you can speak. Okay. Kate, my darling.
I was just going to say what you asked to Tisha about, what it said in the purport where it talks about how he favors the devotee, but isn't that it's because of that relationship that we have with Krishna that the non-devotee doesn't have.
Good.
Right? It's the reciprocation. It's not just that. I mean, it is by the mercy of Prabhupada and it is only by mercy, but we're engaged in the process. So
Right, right. And you're accepting the mercy. And what about devotional service? You know, you're right. That exchange is an exchange of love between the devotee and the Lord. It's an exchange of love, right?
Right.
Krishna is just like anyone else. Not that he's just like anyone else, but if someone is ignoring you and not paying attention to you, then you won't let him be, and you won't pay attention to him. So Krishna, in the same way, when he sees someone's dealing with him with love, you know, it's natural that he's going to reciprocate. Anyone can do that. Anyone, even the non-devotees, they can do it. When, you know, as soon as you turn to Krishna, you become a devotee. He's very lenient that way. Thank you. Hemavati, did you want to say something?
Yes, through our service is amazing how we get in touch with that reciprocation that sometimes is so immediate. I'll give you an example of yesterday. I was on book distribution. I could have been on any other service, but I was on book distribution. And I had this competition of two people who were doing a survey on legalized recreative marijuana. And after 5 days of having them, you know, compete with me because they take all the people that were I could have gone to my table, my book table, I just thought for 1 minute, oh, Krishna, please make them go away. And immediately the girl, she had a phone call and her roommate was in trouble and she said she had to go. So when moments like that comes in my life, I really feel the presence of Krishna reciprocating to my efforts.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, that's a good Sankirtan story. That's wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Now this is a little bit finishing that purport, but we're going to ask Sham Govinda to read it, and then he can read the next slide too. Sham Govindaji, are you there?
Sam, I think there are not as many slides, so people can't really read too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, just this one.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, Don, you want to read this?
Yes, the process of meditating on the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within oneself and the process of chanting the glories and pastimes of the Lord are the same. The only difference is that hearing and fixing the mind on the pastimes of the Lord is easier than visualizing the form of the Lord within one's heart, because as soon as one begins to think of the Lord, especially in this age, the mind becomes disturbed. And due to so much agitation, the process of seeing the Lord within the mind is interrupted. When there is sound vibrated praising the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, however, one is forced to hear. That hearing process enters into the mind, and the practice of yoga is automatically performed.
Unmute, Sam.
I'm sorry. You explain that now, Sham, and then I'll tell you my little take on it.
Okay, so basically, in the age of Kali, our minds are disturbed, so we can't focus on the form of the Lord, but we can hear about his pastimes because they're more absorbing. That's basically the essence. And I think Mother Urmila actually breaks this down. She says that when we hear a story, whether we're a child or a devotee, a story tends to bypass the false ego. In other words, we don't identify ourselves with it in any way, so we can just hear it. So it's more absorbing.
Oh, that's interesting. Good. I was thinking how, because we read that verse, Nami Namino, and I was thinking how the name is full. So the pastimes of the Lord are actually present in the name, in the form, in the qualities, as well as his pastimes. That's his complete transcendental attribute, that he is present within his name. His activities, his pastimes are present within his name. Ian, you want to add to that?
Yeah, Hare Krishna, everybody.
Very well.
Okay, was just thinking about in the story of Dhruva Maharaj, you know, his story meditated for some time, you know, chanting, that mantra that was given to him by Narada Muni. And at some point in time, Lord appeared within his heart and within and without. And after a while, we know it changed. In the case of Narada Muni, after a while, Narada wasn't able to see the Lord again within his heart. And he said, Lord said, Narada, well, you won't be able to see me again in this lifetime. So when the Lord does appear in the heart, it doesn't stay for a long time. In the story, Lord Brahma, after he had the exchange with Lord Brahma, the Lord disappeared. So in most of the stories, once the Lord appears, say what he has to say, then disappears. So it does stay around for a long period of time. And also in this age, we're not able to focus that much attention. As Arjuna did say in the, I think in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that to maybe control the mind, is so much difficult. Easier for him to control the wind. So
Good.
that's my little take on it.
So you recommend we chant Hare Krishna? Is that your recommendation?
Yes, chant Hare Krishna, in a humble state of mind. Hare Krishna.
Okay, that's it. That covers everything right there.
Yeah,
Sham,
yeah.
thank you, Ian. Sham.
Yes, in the previous verse, sorry, Mother Samapriya, in the previous verse, I think it said that we can focus on the Lord's devotees too. And so I was watching Mother Samapriya's remembrance of Srila Prabhupada. And so it seems like I can just be watching YouTube videos and also purifying my consciousness.
It depends who you watch. Don't watch me. You won't get purified. Watch someone else. Watch my husband. Watch someone else, please. I'm an example of Prabhupada's mercy. That's what I am. Hare Krishna.
So therefore he gets purified because of that.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Let's go on. Chaita, would you like to read this slide? Thank you, Sham.
Thank you, Mataji. Haribol, everyone. Bhagavatam 3:28, 20, and 21. In fixing his mind on the eternal form of the Lord, the yogi should not take a collective view of all his limbs, but should fix the mind on each individual limb of the Lord. The devotee should first concentrate his mind on the Lord's lotus feet, which are adorned with the marks of a thunderbolt, a goad, a banner, and a lotus. The splendor of their beautiful ruby nails resembles the orb of the moon and dispels the thick gloom of one's heart. Purport. To think of the Lord as a whole may sometimes be impersonal. Therefore, it is recommended here that one first think of his lotus feet, then his ankles, then the thighs, then the waist, then the chest, then the neck, then the face, and so on. One should begin from the lotus feet and gradually rise to the upper limbs of the transcendental body of the Lord. A concrete description of the eternal form of the Lord is given here. The Lord's soul is depicted with distinctive lines resembling a thunderbolt, a flag, a lotus flower, and a goad. The luster of his toenails, which are brilliantly prominent, resembles the light of the moon. If a yogi looks upon the marks of the Lord's soul and on the blazing brilliance of his nails, then he can be freed from the darkness of ignorance in material existence. This liberation is not achieved by mental speculation, but by seeing the light emanating from the lustrous toenails of the Lord. In other words, one has to fix his mind first on the lotus feet of the Lord if he wants to be freed from the darkness of ignorance in material existence. Haribol.
Haribol. So that has a few really wonderful points. I was going to ask some questions of you.
Please.
How is meditation on the whole body at once impersonal?
It's like looking at the forest for the trees.
I
You-
see. Good.
It blankets the whole thing, and you don't appreciate all the individual parts and the majesty and the exquisiteness of each part. So this is very good to isolate it like that and take them one at a time. And also, Kapila Deva is showing us that there's a sequence to viewing the Lord's form. You don't
Good.
just you start at the bottom and you go slowly, higher and higher. And I'm appreciating the picture that Dhruva Maharaj put up on this page. And Srila Prabhupada in his purport, he's only giving a few of those symbols that are present on the Lord's lotus feet. And so in that regard, I'm so glad I got this first because I wanted to bring up, there's this beautiful book that I received personally from my friend Nandaji when I was in Florida, 15, 20 years ago. And I was fortunate enough to take a workshop. And this book is called Sri Sri Radha Govinda's Meditation on the Divine Forms and Lotus Feet by Mahanidhi Swami.
Pull it closer to your face, so yeah, a little
Wait a
more
minute.
to your
Put
left.
it in. Put it in.
Can you see it?
Only the bottom part. You
Put
have
it in
to
front of
move
your
over,
chest, Cheta.
but it's- Okay.
Better?
Yeah.
So
I
this
see.
book is based on Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Rupa Chintamani.
Oh, that's the book with a different cover.
Okay, it could be a different cover, but anyway, this book is
Same book.
fabulous. It has all the symbols on both Shri Krishna's lotus feet and Srimati Radharani's lotus feet. And Nanda was so wonderful. She explained in detail what each one of these symbols that you're
Wow.
looking at in this picture, they each have a meaning about a characteristic of the Lord.
That's wonderful.
So
Thank you.
do you meditate on that when you chant japa?
When I do, I actually have a picture of the lotus feet and I put it on the altar there next to Srimati Tulsi Devi. And I'm trying to every day give
Wonderful.
it more and more attention and meditation.
Nanda, since you know all those different symbols and their meanings, do you also do the same? Did you cultivate a practice of that, doing that?
Yes, I did at a certain point, and I did for a while, and I've gotten away from it. But this is a good reminder to get back to it because it's great. It's just like when Sama tells me that she meditates on the Shikshastika prayers. She goes through different prayers. So you can go through different symbols and meditate on them for a while and go on to the next symbol and try to remember the order. It's
What did your meditations evolve to from the feet?
From the feet.
You used to do the feet, not then
Yeah,
something else.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So now I kind of do what you're recommending, meditating on what I'm reading on, and try to think of that and not all my other things.
One of the things I wanted to help everybody understand, especially those that are a little newer in their practice, there was a statement here that it says to think of the Lord's lotus feet constantly is the goal of yoga, something of that nature, that constantly controlling the mind. And that means, that's why I had that one forum that was called Practice Makes Perfect. Devotees should actually cultivate a practice while they chant of also thinking of, being aware of their internal dialogue, just like the yogi, first of all, goes with his breath or her breath, and then inside with pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. It's a progressive thinking of the Lord. So obviously that has a starting point. And if we learn how to do that by constant practice, then over the course of years and decades, it becomes more and more fixed, which is supposed to happen. So that I'm glad that we had this conversation where everybody shared a little bit of how they've progressed. It's wonderful. Thank you all.
Okay, now I have to ask you to please share your meditation on the lotus feet? Because this has been going on for many, many years.
Same thing. I got a book similar to the one Nanda had, but I got one back in 1980. And I used to think of Krishna's lotus feet from above, like we see when we see the deities, and you see his toes. Samapriya has recently collected a whole bunch of drawings and paintings and different things from the internet, which is a real nice collection. But then I read a similar book about the symbols and what they mean. So I started meditating on them, and I found it also difficult, just like we just read about, the entire form of the Lord was a little difficult to meditate on. So Lord Kapila is breaking it down to each item: his feet, his ankles, his thighs, his waist. So in the same way, I started meditating on each individual symbol during my rounds in one day. Like today, I'm meditating on the flower, and that flower is on Radharani's foot, it's on Lord Chaitanya's foot, and it's on Lord Nityananda's foot, but it's not on Krishna's foot. So there's different ways that those things evolve.
Okay, Nanda, do you want to say something?
If I may, and you can tell me if I'm, so anyway, when you just said something, Dhruva, that struck me, when you said you're meditating on his feet from above, but so that reminded me of what this is my realization, and I tried to check it out with some other, with other advanced devotees. So if you always look at the pictures, you always see that the foot, as you're looking at the picture, the foot on the right side, the foot on the left side is marked right. And
Right.
the foot on the right side is marked left. So how can it be like that unless we're a piece of dust in Vrindavan looking up
There you
the
go.
feet?
There.
Krishna.
Oh, boy.
That was,
Hare
and
Krishna.
I've asked around. I tried to ask Gopi Pranadhana, but I didn't get a straight answer, whatever. And I asked Dhanadhar Maharaj, and he thought that was correct, that it's, you're looking from the dust position. Anyway.
You're looking from the dust position. That's perfect in all accounts.
Yeah.
In this description that we read too, there's also an interesting feature here. It says this liberation is not achieved by mental speculation, but by seeing the light emanating from the lustrous toenails of the Lord. You can't see the toenails if you're underneath looking up. In other words, one has
More
to fix the
confusion.
mind on the lotus feet of the Lord if he wants to be freed from the darkness of ignorance of material existence.
Well, you know something? I think that everybody
He
can
moved
look
up.
at the huh?
The yogi moved up, slowly
yeah,
moving up. First he started here, and he's up, looking at
Okay.
the nails.
Okay, so what if somebody looks from the top and another person looks on the bottom and just fixes? I think that's okay too, isn't it? I mean, variety.
Yes, that's what.
Oh, okay. I think Faye, I saw you get up and get a book. Did you want to say something about the book that you got? Is that about the lotus feet? Faye? Unmute, sweetie. Look what she's got it too.
Yeah. There's Sri Radha's
Ah,
feet as well as Sri Krishna's feet.
There you go.
It's a book I actually shared with Premananda. So
Okay, well, it's wonderful, wonderful. Mercy is at the lotus feet of the Lord, and we all want that mercy. Thank you.
And I'm using that book to meditate on the lotus
Wonderful.
feet, like all of you. So,
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Hari
That's
Bol.
one.
and it started, I got the inspiration after going through this lesson, these chapters.
Mhm.
Oh, good, good,
Nice.
good. Tisha,
So thank you.
thank you.
I didn't catch the name of the book. Could
Oh,
you say it
she's
again?
next. She wants to get the
I want
book.
to get it too.
Oh,
I can't
okay.
see it or something. We could just say it out loud.
I'll put the link in the chat.
Oh, that would be great. Perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Thank
he's gonna put the link. Oh, wait a minute. I think there might be, okay, so what does it mean to meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord? What is another very important significance of meditating in the lotus feet of the Lord? Anyone know? Oh, here's my husband back. I was
Yeah,
just
this-
thinking, oh, he went to get the book. This
Can
is
you
his
see it?
book.
Well, this is another one. I
That's
guess there are a few.
Now, I was going to say that meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord also puts the devotee in a humble position, which is the way that we can approach Krishna. So that's very important too.
Oh, Premananda just put the book available on Amazon.
Okay,
Thank you, Premananda. Okay, let's
let's
move
go on.
move on the yogi's meditation.
Okay, Chaita, you want to
process.
read? Chaita, I
Uh,
have to ask you a question.
Should we have
how
somebody
did-
new, Sama? I mean, there's so many different
Yeah, I've
devotees.
already read.
Oh, you read already? Oh, I'm
Yes, I
sorry.
did.
I'm sorry,
Thank
Faye. I'm sorry. I got but I want
No
to ask.
worries.
I want to
No
ask you a
worries.
question, Chaita. How do you pronounce your name? Because we've been having heated
Oh.
arguments about how to pronounce it.
Oh, no.
Okay,
I
say it. Just
don't
tell
wanna be
us.
a Chatta Mai.
Chatamai. Okay, Chatamai. Thank you,
Thank you so
Chata.
much. Sorry to
Okay.
be such
He
a
won.
disturb.
He won. Okay. Faye, why don't you read for us?
Thank you, Mataji. Good morning. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam 3.28.22. The blessed Lord Shiva becomes all the more blessed by bearing on his head the holy waters of the Ganges, which has its source in the water that washed the Lord's lotus feet. The Lord's feet act like thunderbolts hurled to shatter the mountain of sin stored in the mind of the meditating devotee. One should therefore meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord for a long time. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Shiva is important because he is holding on his head the holy Ganges water, which has its origin in the footwash of Lord Vishnu. In the Hari Bhakti Vilas by Sanatana Goswami, it is said that anyone who puts the Supreme Lord and the demigods, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, on the same level, at once becomes a Pasandi or atheist. We should never consider that the Supreme Lord Vishnu and the demigods are on an equal footing. The mind of the conditioned soul, on account of its association with material energy from time immemorial, contains heaps of dirt in the forms of desires to lord it over material nature. This dirt is like a mountain, but a mountain can be shattered when hit by a thunderbolt. Meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord acts like a thunderbolt on the mountain of dirt in the mind of the yogi. If the yogi wants to shatter the mountain of dirt in his mind, he should concentrate on the lotus feet of the Lord and not imagine something void or impersonal. Because the dirt has accumulated like a solid mountain, one must meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord for quite a long time. For one who is accustomed to thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord constantly, it is a different matter. The devotees are so fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord that they do not think of anything else.
Okay, Faye, that is a really wonderful verse. But I, of course, have a question. If Lord Shiva is a great devotee of the Lord, and we just read that we should actually chant the names of the devotees, how come it is being said that Lord Shiva, we shouldn't be considering that Lord Shiva is just as good as Krishna, even though he's a devotee? That I really want to know the answer to that one.
If you go back, Mataji, to the very first line of verse 22, the blessed Lord Shiva becomes all the more blessed by bearing on his head the holy waters of the Ganges, which has its source in the water that washed the Lord's lotus feet. That makes me think of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and washing, I think it was Gundika temple. Gundicha. They were doing some serious efforts in washing the floors, and Lord Chaitanya directed them to throw buckets of water again and sweep again and clean it again. And there's a sweet little section in the purports that describe the anxious excitement of one of the devotees of Lord Chaitanya, who wanted to have even the dirty water that had washed the temple, or the dirty water that had touched the feet of Lord Chaitanya, over his head. Lord Shiva, we traditionally think of him associated with the mode of ignorance. But here he is being elevated in this verse as even Lord Shiva is excited and happy and delighted to bear on his head, his bowed head, the water that has come from the Ganges, which has washed the feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Good. Well, that
So
would
there's
indicate.
the exaltation.
Yeah, that's true. So he's definitely a devotee.
Yes.
He's a devotee. So why is it said in the purport that one should not consider that Lord Shiva or any of the demigods, he's in the category, Prabhupada puts him in the category of demigods, that he's...
No demigod, no entity that we can even imagine could be more supreme than the Lord himself.
That's
He's
true.
the absolute supreme.
Good. That's true. But a devotee should be worshipped in the same way, and chanting the name of the devotee is purifying. Pati, could you answer that question? Thank you, Faye. That's perfect, though.
Because Lord Shiva in Hinduism, there's a whole sect of a parampara and a sect of religious believers who believe that Lord Shiva is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that Krishna is subordinate to him. So in this way, I think, where is it? Srila Prabhupada often points out that the demigods, the difference between demigods and the Supreme Lord. Of course, we know from further study that Lord Shiva is a great devotee, as you're pointing out. So, but in that particular point, he's saying here we should never consider the Supreme Lord Vishnu and the demigods on equal footing. He's just pointing it out because it's important to understand. Once it's understood, then the detail of who he is and how he is glorified as a devotee comes second.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Faye, and thank you, Pati.
Thank you,
And
Martin.
who? Okay, darling. We have Subhas A12.
That's Bhadra.
Oh, right. Bhadraji, are you there? I didn't see him. I didn't see Bhadra. Okay, we'll come back to that. Ian, would you like to read this?
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so 3.28.23, yogi should fix in his heart the activities of Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, who is worshipped by all demigods and is the mother of the Supreme Person, Brahma. She can always be found massaging the legs and thighs of the Transcendental Lord, very carefully serving him in this way. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lakshmi is always engaged in massaging the legs and thighs of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, who is lying on the ocean of Garbo within the universe. Brahma is described here as the son of the goddess of fortune, but actually he was not born of her womb. Brahma takes his birth from the abdomen of the Lord himself. The lotus flower grows from the abdomen of Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, and Brahma is born there. Therefore, Lakshmi Ji's massaging of the thighs of the Lord should not be taken as the behavior of an ordinary wife. The Lord is transcendental to the behavior of the ordinary male and female.
What is that? What does that mean? She certainly is not ordinary.
Yes, and yeah.
What does that mean?
I want to be massaging the country massaging lotus feet of the Lord is no simple feat. As a matter of fact, in the processes of devotion service, she is regarded as, the 9 processes, there are some personalities are mentioned, and she's mentioned as Pade Sivanam, I think so.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Serving
also,
the lotus feet.
yes, it is also said that she's a mother, but this is deep because we know Brahma came from the abdomen of the Lord. It is mentioned here, so it is mentioned that she is a mother. Anyhow, we know it's deep. So by virtue of she being the goddess of fortune, the wife of Lord Vishnu, well, it could be said that he has a son. It could be said that she's the mother. So
Right. That's
it's
the explanation.
deep. Yeah, but
Is what?
she's no ordinary wife. It is said there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's not an ordinary wife. What does that
Yeah.
mean? Is Prabhupada saying that all husbands shouldn't expect their wives to massage their feet? Or what?
Yeah. Totally. 100%.
Yeah, a lot of people. Oh. Anyway, it's taking a very humble position. It's a great honor to. But what if the husband's devotee? Would that be the same honor? Serving the feet of the devotee?
Yes, I think it is said there that if the wife serves the husband faithfully, with some sort of reciprocal, mutual understanding, then once he progresses, she progresses too. So that understanding. So it's not,
From another point of view, Lord Kapila Dev is instructing that not only the Lord himself should be worshipped and meditated upon, but his transcendental consorts, either Srimati Radharani or the goddesses of fortune, should also be meditated upon. Their activities of love and benedictions and pastimes are all transcendental. So meditating on them is different than meditating on the men and women of this world and their activities and relationships.
Right. She's the greatest servant. Like Srimati Radharani is the greatest servant. And look, here's a picture of Krishna and Lakshmi Devi. So what is she doing? She's serving him. She's serving him. Padasevana, that means topmost servant, really. Thank you. Okay, Ian, you have something else to say before we move on? Which it looks like we just moved on.
yeah, that's okay.
Are you okay?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay. How about Kate? Kate, would you like to read this?
Yeah, thank you.
Do you know who this deity is? Who knows who this deity is?
Radha Ramanji.
Radharamanji. Gopal Bhatta Goswami, his deity. Thank you. Go on, Kate.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28-24. Next, the yogi should fix his mind in meditation on the personality of Godhead's thighs, the storehouse of all energy. The Lord's thighs are whitish blue, like the luster of the linseed flower, and appear most graceful when the Lord is carried on the shoulders of Garuda. Also, the yogi should contemplate his rounded hips, which are encircled by a girdle that rests on the exquisite yellow silk cloth that extends down to his ankles. The yogi is advised to meditate upon the transcendental form of the Lord, beginning from the soles of the feet and then gradually rising up to the knees, to the thighs, and finally arriving at his face. The system of meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead begins from his feet. The description of the transcendental form of the Lord is exactly represented in the Archa Vigraha, the statue in the temples. Generally, the lower part of the body of the statue of the Lord is covered with yellow silk. That is the Vaikuntha dress, or the dress of the Lord wears in the spiritual sky. This cloth extends down to the Lord's ankles. Thus, since the yogi has so many transcendental objectives on which to meditate, there is no reason for his meditating on something imaginary, as is the practice of the so-called yogis whose objective is impersonal.
Unmute, Sama.
Okay, often I see Kate in front of Radha Shamsundar, sometimes with her child, who is all pointing to the deities, and she's totally absorbed. So what do you think? And you're a yogi. What do you get out of meditating on the body of the Lord, on the lotus feet and the thighs?
So it's a lot easier when I'm in front of the deity, and in order to engage my son, we just look for the different things, the different objects, right, that he can relate to. But for my practice, I actually had a very hard time, with the assignment. I did not respond to the forum, but I just was able to notice how distracted my mind actually is. But when I was reading this verse about the storehouse of energy in the thighs, I was just meditating. I mean, it's just so hard for me to just focus on. It's just so hard for me to focus on anything, but I was meditating on, wow, the storehouse of all the energy, right? The source of all the energy. That's what I was meditating on. I wasn't necessarily meditating on the actual thigh, but I was meditating on the fact that within Krishna's form is everything, including the storehouse of all energy.
Very good. This is when I was reading this section, and I kept reading it over and over. I wrote to Tisha about it, actually. Meditating. Well, I was chanting, and then I read the verse, and then I was meditating on the lotus feet and the knees and the calves and the thighs. It was just so wonderful. It was as though the Bhagavatam was taking me through this wonderful meditation on the body of the Lord, meditating on each section. So we can do that when we're chanting. We can meditate on the different features of the body of the Lord, and that is sublime. I had a wonderful experience of it. And then sometimes it turns into something like you were talking about, Kate, that the thighs, just like when we talk about the symbols on the lotus feet of the Lord, it expands into something. So here we're probably saying that how the thighs, the storehouse of all power. What a great meditation is that. And when you're chanting, you can get really absorbed in it. I appreciate what your meditation is. Thank you.
Does anyone know the history of this deity that they can tell in a synopsis form? So we can all appreciate this deity is very, very dear to all Gaudiya Vaishnavas.
You say, Patti.
Well, anybody else can tell? I'm doing a lot of talking today. This deity, go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Ian, you know the story?
I think it was a self-manifested deity.
Yes.
It was some Shaligram Shila.
Good.
And they just, yeah. So this Radha Rani is not there, but she's already there. But in this case, we don't actually see her, but so self-manifested data, understand, from some Shaligram Shila.
Good. And this is,
that's what I heard.
The devotee who Gopal Bhatta Goswami, do you know why it became manifest?
I don't remember that part of the story.
So he wanted to serve a deity, and he had Shalagram. I think he had maybe 12 Shalagram Shila, but he wanted to serve the deity. So one day he wakes up and bathes and gets ready to do his puja and opens the box, And there was Radha Ramanji, self-manifest. And because I think Himavati was mentioning how when you have a desire to serve Krishna in a certain way, he fulfills it. He wants to cultivate that. So he manifested himself in this form so that Sanatana Goswami could serve him. That's and very, as my husband said, very dear to all the devotees in Vrindavan. Going to see this deity, there's always some nice flute music and harmonium. The devotees are playing beautiful bhajans. Just
I've also heard.
Yeah.
I've also
Go on.
heard that Gopal Bhatta Goswami was receiving these nice outfits and jewelry, and he had a Sheila. So he said, "Well, how can I put these on?" You know, so that's his meditation started about having a deity.
Good. Well, that's beautiful. Who was giving him the clothes? Just people.
A rich merchant from
the
Mathura.
rich merchant. Yeah.
Oh, a rich merchant from Mathura. It was all a setup. How wonderful. Thank you, Mathura.
Hare Krishna, I just want to thank you for keeping this image up on my screen for so very long.
Okay.
Gorgeous.
Okay, Madhurya Leela, why don't you read this next slide?
Okay. Let's see if I can see it. The yoga, this is Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28-25. The yogi should then meditate on his moon-like navel in the center of his abdomen. From his navel, which is the foundation of the entire universe, sprang the lotus stem containing all the different planetary systems. The lotus is the residence of Brahma, the first created being. In the same way, the yogi should concentrate his mind on the Lord's nipples, which resemble a pair of most exquisite emeralds, and which appear whitish because of the rays of the milk white pearl necklace is adorning his chest.
Read the next.
Well, I think I'll let somebody else read that. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Sham Govinda, you want to read this? Sham?
I've already read, but I'm happy
don't
to.
worry, everybody's read. So now you read this. Okay?
The yogi is advised next to meditate upon the navel of the Lord, which is the foundation of all material creation. Just as a child is connected to his mother by the umbilical cord, so the firstborn living creature, Brahma, by the supreme will of the Lord, is connected to the Lord by a lotus stem. In the previous verse, it was stated that the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, who engages in massaging the legs, ankles, and thighs of the Lord, is called the mother of Brahma. But actually, Brahma is born from the abdomen of the Lord, not from the abdomen of his mother. It is explained in the Brahma Samhita that each limb of the Lord has the potency of every other limb, because everything is spiritual. His parts are not conditioned. The Lord can see with his ears. The material ear can hear but cannot see, but we understand from the Brahma Samhita that the Lord can also see with his ears and hear with his eyes. Any organ of his transcendental body can function as any other organ. His abdomen is the foundation of all the planetary systems. Brahma holds the post of the creator of all planetary systems, but his engineering energy is generated from the abdomen of the Lord. Any creative function in the universe always has a direct connecting link with the Lord.
Just go back to leave the words up here. And isn't this a wonderful last sentence? No, Sham, read this last sentence and see if you can explain it to us. Any creative function.
Any creative function in the universe always has a direct connecting link with the Lord. I guess the Lord's the cause of all causes. Yeah.
And this is a very good hint. This is a very good hint how to, it's actually connected to worshiping the lotus feet, to that humble position, when we understand that every function in the universe has a direct connection with the Lord. He's actually in charge of everything. I thought that was really a significant point of this purport.
A nice example Srila Prabhupada gives is that an artist can produce a rose, but who is the original creator of that rose with scent included? Whereas the artist can't create the scent. Mankind can try to simulate it, but actually the original is coming from the Lord. Without the Lord, those things don't exist. We can only create an imitation or with an empowerment by the Lord.
Oh, here's Gopapatni. Maybe Gopa can read the next one. Oh, first, Ian. Ian, what's your question, darling, or your comment?
Just a comment that in the Gita, Shri Krishna says, "I'm the ability in man." So we know there are a lot of beautiful buildings and all around the place.
Very good.
So for example, before the World Trade Center came down, I was in Manhattan and trying to look, up to the top, and I had to bow my head because it was so hard to look at. I was saying, wow, look at this building. There must be somebody who designed it, but now we know who gave the designer, the ability to design the building.
Good.
So we say anything spectacular, wow, it's Shri Krishna energy.
Yeah,
So-
try telling that to the material designer.
That would be hard. Hare Krishna.
That's what keeps
Yeah.
us in the material world, thinking
Yeah.
that we are
We are
actually
the-
the source of everything.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's beautiful.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, let's go on. Gopapatni. I saw
Hare
your name there. There you are.
Yeah, it's late.
Okay, better late than never.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28-26. The yogi should then meditate on the chest of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the abode of Goddess Mahalakshmi. The Lord's chest is the source of all transcendental pleasure for the mind and full satisfaction for the eyes. The yogi should then imprint on his mind the neck of the Personality of Godhead, who is adored by the entire universe. The neck of the Lord serves to enhance the beauty of the Kaustubha gem, which hangs on his chest. And I've got a little interference in the background here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the Upanishads, it is said that the various energies of the Lord are working to create, destroy, and maintain. These inconceivable varieties of energy are stored in the bosom of the Lord. As people generally say, God is all-powerful. That prowess is represented by Mahalakshmi, the reservoir of all energies, who is situated on the bosom of the transcendental form of the Lord. The yogi who can meditate perfectly on that spot, on the transcendental form of the Lord, can derive many material powers which compromise the 8 perfections of the yoga system.
Wow. Okay, so meditating on Lakshmi, she that's why we chant Hare Krishna, right? We say Hare first. We take
Hare.
shelter of the energy. Tell me about that. Go back to the words, Patti. Gopaji, talk about that a little bit. How actually we approach the energy first. That's what it seems to be here.
Oh, energy of the Lord. Yes. Hooray, hooray.
Right. So the prowess is represented, the power that's prowess is power. She is the reservoir of all energies. Isn't that wonderful? That's a very, and we chant Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada says, first you approach the energy of God.
He's massaging his thighs because Prabhupada said that the source of all energy is his thighs, but she's always massaging his feet and his thighs. So she's getting her energy from him.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
I
Wow.
don't know. No, I was asking the question.
Well, you gave the answer too. Patti, what is that? Can you help with that? Sounds good to me.
Yes.
Everything is coming from Krishna, but it's really hard to separate Radha and Krishna, Lakshmi and Narayan. We see that Lord Chaitanya came to unite the energy and the energetic. It's really, so it's hard to separate them. But but he is separated. Why? Why is he separated? We see it in this form even. To enjoy begins with a P. Pastimes. Gopal, where are you? Okay, yeah. To enjoy pastimes. So, you know, he wanted his feet to get massaged. He needed someone. So, okay, Lakshmi. No, I'm just making a joke. But anyway, that's beautiful. Thank you. And let's try to finish all of these.
I have a question about the last line.
Okay.
The last line that Prabhupada is saying that the yogi who can meditate perfectly on that spot, on the transcendental form of the Lord, can derive many material powers. What would be considered a material power, which comprise the 8 perfections of the yoga system?
Which comprise the 8 perfections of the yoga system. You know, there's all the Lagima city, all the different cities, getting people to, that's a real good tool on Sankirtan. You get people to believe you and accept whatever you've had to say, you know. As what I understand it, all the different powers. Pati, I think you should help out
Yes,
here.
there are 8 different mystic powers, Asta cities, becoming smaller than the smallest, larger than the largest, can travel to any destination immediately, like yogis like Durvasa Muni. We learned that he used his yogic power when he was being chased by the Sudarshan Chakra to travel throughout the entire universe. Or some yogis may show in this day and age some bogus small city where they produce some ash or something. There's also one city where you can obtain something from anywhere and bring it to you. So by meditating on the Srivat's part of the Lord on his chest, these material powers become byproducts of that meditation. Unfortunately, some yogis will become distracted and diverted in their attention when they start to receive those powers. It's one of the drawbacks of that kind of yoga is that there are allurements of material great powers. They can even produce a planet. Look at what Kardama Muni did at the beginning of our studying with Devahuti and Kardama Muni. He created this huge mansion with all kinds of luxuries in it. So the yogis are able, he actually manifested it. I mean, they lived in it and traveled around the universe in his mansion. So these are some of those 8 perfections that are mentioned in that particular verse. Unmute, Sama.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have one more. Well, it's kind of like a question and an answer. Durga Devi, you see, is an expansion also of Lakshmi Devi in the material world. So depending upon the heart and the real desire of the yogi, when he performs these kinds of austerities, that will become fulfilled. And is there a moment that, or a time where Lakshmi kind of turns into Durga for the yogi to fulfill his material desires? It would be wonderful that people, if we all did great austerities, and that's what we're trying to do, to satisfy Lakshmi Devi or Srimati Radharani and Krishna. But there are yogis who become enamored, as my husband was saying, but also have desires in the heart. Our heart, it goes so deep. There's so much there, you know, all the desires of the living entity.
We only have 3 slides and only 3 minutes.
Oh, we have 3 minutes. Okay. Mama Taraji, would you like to read this? I think you have to.
Text 27. The yogi should further meditate upon the Lord's 4 arms, which are the source of all the powers of the demigods, who control the various functions of material nature. Then the yogi should concentrate on the polished ornaments, which were burnished by Mount Mandara as it revolved. He should also duly contemplate the Lord's discus and the Sudarshan chakra, which contains 1,000 spokes, and the dazzling luster, as well as the conch, which looks like a swan in his lotus-like palm. Purport. The Lord's transcendental form can be meditated upon in the mind or placed in the temple in the form of a statue and decorated in such a way that everyone can contemplate it. Temple worship is therefore meant for persons who are not so advanced that they can meditate upon the form of the Lord. There is no difference between constantly visiting the temple and directly seeing the transcendental form of the Lord. They are of equal value.
What do you have to say for that? I know that you cook for the deities, so that's definitely meditation on the form of the Lord. Look at this picture. It's beautiful. What do you have to say about this, Mama Taraji?
Definitely appreciable, you know. Very nice.
Anybody know who this deity is?
Balaji.
Right. And
Who is it?
Right?
Tirupati.
Acha.
And you
And
see, Tilak is so big because he doesn't see the fault of the Kali Yuga devotees.
Oh, is that the reason? Nice.
Wow.
That's what I heard.
Thank you. That's good. We'll leave it at that for now. That's very nice. Are those flowers all on his hands and arms?
No,
Those
these are all gems.
those are all gems.
Yes, and they're real ones. This
Wow.
deity is the most opulent deity in the world.
Isn't that
And he has a treasure house too.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Wow,
But
look
you
at that.
can see him for like 2 seconds when you go for darshan. The lines are so long that you can only stand like for 2 seconds in front of him because there's so many devotees coming to see him.
These are not plastic or glass either. These are rubies, diamonds.
My goodness.
Yeah. He's got his forearms. That's what the verse was in this meditation. Chakra, lotus. Die. Okay.
Wow.
Club.
Okay, thank you. Nanda, would you like to speak? Read?
Read, yes. Okay. Text 28. Third canto, chapter 28, text 28. The yogi should meditate upon his club, which is named Kamodaki, and it's very dear to him. This club smashes the demons who are always inimical soldiers and is smeared with their blood.
Hey.
Haribol. One should also concentrate on the nice garland on the neck of the Lord, which is always surrounded by bumblebees and their nice buzzing sound. And one should meditate upon the pearl necklace on the Lord's neck, which is considered to represent the pure living entities who are always engaged in his service. Purport. There are 2 classes of living entities who act in 2 different ways. The Supreme Lord keeps on his neck those living entities who are pure, as one protects the jewels and pearls on his bosom and neck of one's body. Those living entities in pure Krishna consciousness are symbolized by the pearls on his neck. Those who are demons are inimical towards the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and are punished by his mace, which is always smeared with the blood of such fallen living entities. Hari.
Okay, Nanda, tell us, describe that. Tell
Well,
us something about this.
Let's just aspire to be on the necklace as opposed to be on snatch. How's that?
You know, we had a god sister, Kamadaki.
Yeah.
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 She left her body, but whoa.
Kamadaki wasn't she one that had been tried to be deprogrammed too, right? Kamadaki?
I never heard that, but she was in Los Angeles for many years. Yeah. Wow. Anything else you'd like to say? You want to be one of the pearls. That's good. Me too.
Or a servant of the pearls. How's that?
Okay, that's even better, if you like. That's wonderful. Okay, let's do the last slide, and that's Premananda to read for us. Thank you, Nandaji.
Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28-29. The yogi should then meditate on the lotus-like countenance of the Lord, who presents his different forms in this world out of compassion for the anxious devotees. His nose is prominent, and his crystal clear cheeks are illuminated by the oscillation of his glittering alligator-shaped earrings. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Lord appears in the particular form loved by a particular type of devotee. There are millions of forms of the Lord, but they are one absolute. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam. All the different forms of the Lord are one, but some devotees want to see him in the form of Radha and Krishna. Others prefer him as Sita and Ramachandra. Others would see him as Lakshmi Narayan, and others want to see him as four-handed Narayan, Vasudeva. The Lord has innumerable forms, and he appears in a particular form as preferred by a particular type of devotee. A yogi should meditate upon the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that has been experienced by the Lord's pure devotees. Yogi means devotee. Yogis who are not actually pure devotees should follow in the footsteps of devotees. It is especially mentioned here that the yogi should meditate upon the form which is thus approved. He cannot manufacture a form of the Lord.
Wow, very good. So, if you're attracted to some form, which form of the Lord are you attracted to, Krimanandaji?
Gaurachandra.
Go, Daddy. That's you're safe there. That's for sure.
Yes.
Okay, what you have something to add to this verse, or your
Well,
understanding of it on this, Ian, too? But you explain your understanding.
So my understanding is variety is the mother of enjoyment. So there are so many living entities. They have so many desires. They have many propensities of their nature. So based on that, the Lord manifests. So he's so merciful that he
Good.
reciprocates according to the level of devotion of the devotees. So that's
Good.
what I get out of it.
Very wonderful. And it's a vital point. It's a vital point. We are persons. We are all individual. We are all different. We have a different relationship with the Lord. So we should cultivate that. We should accept that and cultivate that. Thank you, Premananda. Ian, did you want to add something?
Yes, quickly. This picture came on, I think, one of the issues that the Back to Godhead magazines. I remember seeing it in a picture.
Oh.
I don't. It was on, issues some time ago. I saw it, and if you notice there, the picture of Lord Jesus Christ is there too. In the list of incarnations. Yes. Yeah, I remember seeing it. Yeah.
I thought also my husband used it before sometime. It's a great picture. Yeah, it's a great
the
picture.
point is the Lord can appear in any form in to a particular devotee. But Srila Prabhupada also points out that it has to be an authorized form. It's not that we can just make up something.
Right. Chaita, or I'm probably saying it wrong again. Chapta.
I had a question about text 1 to 11 from the Bhagavatam, which says Brahm eti, Paramatma eti, and Bhagavan. So in this verse 27, Lord Kapila is recommending that we meditate on the Lord having 4 arms. So isn't he pinpointing that we should be meditating on the Paramatma, or do I just meditate on the form that appeals to me?
Good. Do you want to answer that?
Lord Kapila's instructions. That's why we're so fortunate to be able to synthesize both Lord Chaitanya's and Lord Kapila Dev's instructions. Lord Kapila Dev is in Satya Yuga, and he is instructing, as was described in the beginning, I think, of the verses. Srila Prabhupada said, the following is a description of the supersoul, the Lord within the heart, because the yogi, was appropriate to time, place, circumstance, and jivas who are in human form and doing meditation at that time. But in this day and age, obviously, Lord Chaitanya has come to bestow upon human society the worship of Radha and Krishna. So meditating on Radha Krishna is certainly bona fide. But if someone wants to meditate on Supersoul, that's what it was pointing out, that any form of the Lord, if the Lord actually manifests during your meditation, then you're most fortunate. not that he should be disregarded and say, oh, no, I can't, because I have to follow the rules, or I have to follow this particular description.
Right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
if you have an affinity to a certain form of the Lord, you meditate on that, and then
Go,
authenticity. We want authenticity. Okay, this whole Hare Krishna chanting is to open your heart, so
Nice.
Manvatar.
Actually, Chatamai asked the same question I was going to ask, because Lord Kapila, it sounded like the guided meditation was the Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. I didn't get that it was the Paramatma. So that was my question.
It was the Lord in the heart. Lord in the heart, as far as
it was the Lord in the heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the thing is, the Lord will manifest in your heart as Krishna, if you're a Krishna Bhakta, or Lord Chaitanya, if you're a Chaitanya Bhakta, or look at Hanuman. The Lord manifests in his heart as Sitaram. So, but this is because we have been studying this for so long, and we've actually long enough to develop a relationship with different forms of the Lord. What do you think, Manvatar?
But the goddess Lakshmi is not present with Krishna in the heart. Isn't that right? And it just turns up the meditation that Lord Kapila Dev is journeying us on. Because in his description, Goddess Lakshmi is there massaging Vishnu's feet and thighs. But the Lord in the heart, maybe I'm wrong. I'm asking.
Well, okay. The Lord in the heart, it was described, there is a hair on his chest, and that is Lakshmi Devi. So it's not that Lakshmi is not with the Lord. And as mentioned in the previous verse, Purusartanam, this Purusha is represented as the Paramatma, or super soul. The description of the super soul upon whom one must meditate will be given in the following verses. So, Pati, you want to explain this?
It sounds like they're both right, because he's saying he's an expansion of the Purusha. And just as Manvatar just pointed out, generally the Lakshmi isn't there with the super soul, but he is there with the Purusha. So both are applicable.
So if we meditate on the form of the Lord that we're inclined to, he'll reveal that form to us in our heart.
Yes.
As we meditate. So when we say Paramatma, just like the gopis saw the four-armed form of Vishnu and paid obeisances and said, did you see Krishna? Did you see Krishna anywhere? So that's what we want, actually. This is a very deep topic. Is everybody set? Manvatar, is that all right, sweetie? Okay. All right. Does anyone have anything else to say? If not, please accept my obeisance. Thank you for your association. Vanchakalpa
Have a good week, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Just found a verse, 3rd canto, 9th chapter, text 11, Brahma's prayer for creative energy. Tvam bhakti yoga paribhavita hrit saroja ase shushrute pato nanunata pumsan yad yadia tad urugaya vibhavayanti tad tad vapu pranayase sad anugrahaya. Oh my Lord, your devotees can see you through the ears by the process of bona fide hearing. And thus their hearts become cleansed. Oh, thank you. And you take your seat there. You are so merciful to your devotees that you manifest yourself in the particular eternal form of transcendence in which they always think of you.
Thank you.
That's perfect. Hare Krishna.
Perfect. Thank you.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Vanchakalpa tarubhascha kripasinubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna. Thank you.